I'm John Travis in Novato, California on the 23rd of June in 2026, talking to Justine Toms in Santa Rosa, just a little ways up the road. And we've known each other almost 50 years. Uh, you and Michael were the, the glue that held together the 70s as it evolved and with new dimensions. And I was lucky enough to come on sometime in the late 70s and used to listen to you and learn about all these wild and crazy people that we were part of. And today I want to dig into who you are and why, what led to you and Michael. We'll have him as much as you can say about him too, and how the two of you got started. But let's start with your early formative experiences of where were you born, siblings, parents, influences, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, thanks for going back, going back to my story, my deep story. The bones of it. I was born in Evanston, Illinois, but I spent a lot of my childhood in Alabama. So I kind
Really?
of, yeah, I
Where?
considered myself having a dual citizenship. From the North Shore of Chicago or a northern suburb of Chicago to rural Alabama, where my ancestry really resided. My grandparents, they had a home. My grandfather was a banker and a Jewish banker in Alabama, and he inherited that from his father, who started the bank. And there was a big Victorian house that had like 5 bedrooms, and all the cousins would be just dropped off there in the
Ah,
summer. And we were just a tribe of nine kids. I don't know how grandmother put up with us, but we grew up together. Anyway, but back to the bones, my I was the third child of four. So,
oh, the
uh,
invisible one. But
y-
you made up for that.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And let's see, I guess the major impact in my life was when I turned 12. Well, first of all, my father was a plywood broker and he had his own plane. And this is back in the 1940s and early 50s. And he would take one of us, one of the kids, with him whenever he flew all over the country. So that for me really impressed me. When you're in a small single engine plane, you're low enough to really see the
Yeah.
geography of the earth. And I guess that was one of my main interest, even later in life, is geography and the rivers and the forest and how things are configured and how they're interconnected. I just find it fascinating. And I was able to visit almost every state in the U.S. through that
Wow.
experience with my father. And sad to say, in 1955, he purchased a twin engine Beechcraft, and he hired a professional co-pilot, which he never did. And he was flying with my little brother out to California, and he crashed, and it was just devastating. It was in a terrible freak snowstorm. And it was so terrible and so sudden that even an Air Force B-52 went down in the same storm. So you can imagine
Wow.
how bad that storm was. And he was then missing for 3 months before we could actually know the outcome of that crash. So as at 12 years old, that was pretty devastating. And I
Yeah.
had to work with that for years. I mean, I continued to work with it. And so that was very informative in my life.
And you lost a brother too then.
And I lost a little brother too. And that's the hardest one, Jack. It's the hardest one to imagine because when they did a forensic look at what Daddy did, he was piloting the plane and he would fly in and out of all these cul-de-sacs trying to find a way out of the mountains. And finally he ran out of gas.
Oh,
And that's how the plane crashed. And the hardest part is just thinking about my little brother during
yeah.
that part of the flight of going back and forth, and it was probably being buffeted by all sorts of winds and that particular plane had a problem with de-icing. It would ice up, the wings
Uh-huh.
would ice up, and didn't have a good de-icing system. So that's why they couldn't get enough height to get out of the mountains in the storm.
What state was he in?
So he was on the border of Wyoming and Utah,
Uh-huh.
right on that border, in a place called Evanston, which
Oh,
is
dear.
interesting. But then later in my life, I moved down full time to Alabama, and
Whereabouts in Alabama?
it was Alexander City, Alabama. Uh,
Huh.
and I,
That near Birmingham or
well,
Mobile?
it's if you make a triangle between Birmingham and Montgomery, and have it go to the right towards Atlanta, that's where at the peak of that triangle, that's where Alexander City was.
Uh-huh.
So it and it I went to Auburn University. In fact,
Oh,
my
yeah.
grandfather was on the board of trustees of Auburn, so I graduated from Auburn. I got my teacher's certificate. Um, However, I want to mention something else that's informative to me in my bones of my life.
Yeah.
It Before I went to Auburn, I got married. I had a young son, and we were very poor. My husband worked in a cotton mill, and um, so I got a job when Robert was about 9 months old. I got a job in the cotton mill, and it was just wonderful. I mean, I was sewing sweatshirts, and I was in a room with all sorts of older women, and they did not have huge education, but they understood like healing. They knew medicines, plant medicines, and all sorts of information. They were a wealth, and I remember when Robert got the croup, and I just thought it was a bad cough, and they said no, this is a real thing, and he ended up in the hospital with the croup. And so anyway, I learned a lot from these women, and I lasted there. But before I left, I was really ticked off at the officers of the that particular part of the cotton mill and how they were paying us because if you were working on something, for me, I was working on cuffs on a sweatshirt, and my hands could go there pretty easily, and it was like a meditation. It was my first instant of learning how to meditate, and so about I don't know, maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I finished with all the cuffs. And now everything that I did after that would earn extra money.
Mm.
And that's when they stopped feeding me cuffs to do, and they gave me these very intricate things like to put a Henley placket into a sweatshirt. And you have this machine, sewing machine, that's so strong and so fast. It's really hard to do that. So you're completely slowed down. So you don't get any extra pay.
Oh,
And that ticked me off. And one day, just like in the movie Sally Field,
oh yeah, that wonderful movie. I love
yeah,
that.
just like that movie, I stood up from my machine. And I
Wow.
remember there was a moment in that room which had probably 50 people. All the machines stopped. For a moment, there was silence in that room when they saw me get up. And I was pissed. And I walked over to, and I believe his name, his official title was Overseer, which is harkens back to the old
Yeah,
slavery times.
yeah.
And I sat down with him and I told him, hey, this is not right. So before I left, I was there for 9 months. Before I left, they changed the policy.
Good for
And
you.
so I gave my contribution to the wonderful women that I worked with. Anyway, I ended up then deciding to go back to college and to earn my degree. And then I started teaching, and I taught for a while in Sylacauga, Alabama, which was about 30 miles away. And I was asked to go to teach in a black school. So I was one of two white teachers in an all black school in when George Wallace was running for president and Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated while I was there. And so that was very informative. I learned a lot there. You can imagine. I learned more than I taught, I must say. Uh, but then I decided my marriage dissolved. My son and I moved to California then. So I taught maybe about 3 years and then I moved to California. So
I'm curious.
those are kind of the bones of my
Yeah, I'm
early
curious.
early life.
If you were poor, did you get scholarship to college? And
No, my mother paid for it completely
oh,
because I grew up middle class, and even when Daddy died, the people that he was associated with, then supported her as if he were still alive. What a wonderful thing! They were had so much integrity.
mm,
And so it was as if Daddy were alive, and they started their own plywood mill, and she was a holder of, she received money for that, and so she was pretty well off, and she paid for my whole education
mm.
and the commute, everything. She even bought uh, like an air conditioner for the car I had.
Oh,
It was really sweet. So mother paid for all of that, and I so appreciate that. And the other thing that she did for me after Daddy died, she did not spare any expense for my interest in horses.
ah,
So she bought me a horse and I would show the jumpers, show jumpers, and I belonged to Fox River Valley Hunt Club, chasing the fox
wow.
across the fields of central Illinois, I guess you'd
Uh-huh.
say. And so she didn't spare any expense for me in that respect, and so that's part of my upbringing too. And my parents were very liberal in a very conservative place.
Uh-huh.
So they were very liberal. So I grew up with quite a liberal outlook and progressive outlook on life.
And now your relationship with your older siblings, how was that? Were you treated well?
Great question. Being the third of four and having two, and my older sister Juliet and my older brother Jeff and myself, all three of us were in high school at the same time.
Mm.
So you can imagine our ages were very close. And but cognitively, I was behind on as far as my my ability to cope with life. And so we would play games like card games. And of course, they would just take me on for a ride. I just couldn't keep up with them. Or we'd get on our bicycles and suddenly they're taking off and I'm left behind. So in that way, it was pretty hard to be the third child
Hmm.
of four of us. And I probably treated my brother the same way they treated me. I don't remember it. I've I've kind of blocked that out.
The
But
kid brother that died.
yeah, the one Butchie, we called him Butchie. His name was Jacques. We were all J's, Justine, Juliet, Jeff, Jacques, but we called him Butchie. And yeah, I probably didn't treat him very well because
Uh,
I passed on my own treatment from
right.
my older siblings.
Yeah. So you were just in Alabama in the summers then at Grandma's house.
Yeah, pretty much. But we would because Daddy had his plane. We people would drive to Grandma's house. Well, we would fly to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving or Christmas or spring vacation or just for whenever. So we spent a lot of time in Alabama, not just summers.
Uh-huh. Now you
Yeah.
said he was a pilot broker? Is that what?
Oh, a plywood
Oh,
broker. So he was in the lumber business.
oh, I see.
And
I thought,
yeah.
okay.
And he was such a good salesman and so good. When he was missing, there was a mill in Arcata, California that paid $5,000 reward to find him.
Hmm.
And at that time, this was 1955, that was a huge amount of
Yeah.
money. And that's how much he was respected in the field.
Uh-huh. Wow. And so how was high school or grade school and high school for
Yeah,
you?
high school was a mess. I was a mess because, except for horses, I was a mess. I just, mother, my siblings, Juliet and Jeff, left home. Jeff he joined the Air Force, and Juliet went to Mills College. So I was home alone with mother, and she was traveling all over the U.S. to meet her lover, her new person, new man in her life. And so I would be left home alone a lot.
Huh.
And so it was a very lonely time for me, I think. And although I was very popular and in high school, and we had a swimming pool in the backyard, and people would, after their dates, they'd come to my house. So it was like the big party house.
Uh-huh.
But even in the midst of all of that, I was very lonely
Hmm.
and it was hard.
Did you have a boyfriend or dating in high
Yeah,
school?
I had several boyfriends. Yeah, exactly. And probably more. All right, all right. Big confession. Big
Oh, good.
confession. All right.
Kidding.
I got involved probably in my sophomore year with a married man. He had graduated from the same high school, and the circumstances of how I met him are, I'm not going to go into that, but anyway, so I was I was sexually active very early on, and he was a wonderful lover. I mean, I gotta say, his name was Butch too. And in fact, I found him recently on Facebook, and we're in contact with
Oh,
one
wow.
another. It's so great. But so that also took me out of my peer group
Uh-huh.
because I would meet him and secretly and so forth. But then after my senior year, I after I graduated and I moved away, and that was the end of that. Actually, it was the end of it by my junior year, I think. So,
Uh-huh.
but I missed a lot of high school. I probably was absent. I guess I was absent on my junior year more than anybody else in my class. So I really had to work hard to graduate because my junior year I just was not a good student, so to speak.
Because
And
because of the
any,
married man, or
pardon me?
time with the married man, or what? Where were you?
Yeah, because I was spending so much time there, and yeah, exactly. And so I guess that in that regard, I really felt like I had to buckle down then and really apply myself intellectually and graduate. My high school was, I mean, all the heads of departments were PhDs. I mean, it was called Glenbrook at that time. It was there are now two Glenbrooks, but it was the older Glenbrook, and it was compared to New Trier, which is in Evans. Where is New Trier? Anyway, one of the top high schools in the country. So it was it was like going to college, going to Glenbrook. So it was good that I was able to graduate and then later on go to Auburn and graduate there. So I feel good about my education
What was your
and
major at Auburn?
education.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's what we did at that time. You were either a nurse
Nurse
or
or
a
teacher?
teacher.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to be a forest ranger, and they said, no, 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 you need to be a teacher. And of course, I buckled and I said, okay, all right, I'll be a teacher.
So now, are we ready to move to California, or is there
Yeah,
an in
so now
between?
we're moving to California. And when I was in Alabama, I want to go talk a little bit about my spiritual life.
Yes.
I was always very spiritually enthusiastic. And I grew up Episcopalian, and my parents actually started the Episcopal Church in Glenview. And then when I got to Alabama and I got married, and my mother-in-law wanted me to become Baptist like
Of
she
course.
was. So we went all around Alex City to find the right Baptist church, and we finally found one that I really loved. And what I loved about it, I loved the singing.
Yeah. They know how
I
to
mean, it
have
was
a
so
good time.
different. The Episcopal songbook is very
Yeah. Church of
uh,
England.
traditional and very,
Yeah.
very quiet and so forth. But the Baptists, they're just heartful and out there and
Yeah.
just really singing up a storm. So I loved it. And I joined the chorus, and sometimes I would sing solos, and people would cry when I would sing. I was so heartful about it. It just really meant so much to me. And so when I moved to California, and I got married again, to a fireman from San Francisco, but we lived in Marin County.
Oh,
And
really? Where in Marin?
we were living in Larkspur at the time.
Ah, just
And
had lunch in Larkspur yesterday.
oh, really, really, at the Creek Creek Inn or where?
No, it's called the Country Farm something or other. It's a breakfast place just off the main intersection. Uh, it's a all natural, local food sort of
Yeah,
place.
nice, nice. Well, when Hal and I were living in Larkspur, when I came down and he was being a friendly guy, he had invited Jehovah's Witnesses into the apartment. And by the time I got downstairs, they were sitting there having coffee. And with my Southern Baptist background, I said, okay, now that they're here, I guess that you believe that only 144,000 go to heaven. Is that right? And they said, well, yes, that's true. And then I said, and you probably don't think that I'm one of those. And they said, yes, that's true. And I said, okay, then what happens to the rest of us? And the witnesses have a very intellectual take on the Bible, let's say the New Testament. And they have their own translation, and they go back to the Greek, which is the New Testament was originally written in Greek. And so they have that kind of take, and that really appealed to me, Jack. Because I love the Bible, and I liked it because they would incorporate the history of what was going on at the time when that particular scripture was written and so forth. And so I became a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm, wow.
But now my husband, he encouraged me, but he didn't join. But he would attend with me, and then um, let's see how what happened. Oh um, we bought a house in San Anselmo. So I was living in San Anselmo. My son was with me. He was in, I think, the third grade by that time. And we that's when I met Michael, and and then got divorced from Hal and met Michael. And then that started the next whole part of my life. I was in my late 20s, early 30s at that time.
And this is where it's going to get really juicy, but I want to go back to how did you happen to pick California? You had a sister at Mills College, but she'd probably graduated by then. Well, how did you happen to
Well, my
get to California?
mother, she stayed in Glenview until I graduated from high school. Then my mother signed on to Sterling Hayden's. He was a an actor, and he had a sailing schooner called the Wanderer, and he would rent it out. And so my mother signed on to be part of the crew of the Wanderer to sail through the South Pacific. And so she sailed for like 3 or 4 months in the South Pacific. She met Marlon Brando in Tahiti because they were filming the what was the name of that film? Anyway, I can't remember, but it was when Tahiti first paved their runway for the studios to come down and do the filming of whatever that film was, which is
The war one, the big he,
uh,
his last film he was in
no, 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 no. It wasn't the last film. It was a much earlier
um,
film. And anyway, so she sailed the South Pacific, and when she left, when she got back home, she stayed in California. And she and Daddy were always planning to move to California, so
mm,
that was always in the plan. So she moved to Tiburon and Marin County. And so then that's where I joined her to begin with and met my husband Hal. And then later on, San Anselmo met Michael.
hmm. Now let's go to the details of how you met Michael and what he was up to at that point.
Michael, at that point, Michael had just um, gone through something called mind dynamics.
Oh yeah.
And mind dynamics was a precursor to
Yes.
EST,
Yeah.
the Werner Erhard.
Right.
And Werner Erhard was part of mind dynamics.
Right.
So the first time I met Michael, I went down to my neighbor's house. So I'm already kind of starting to drift away from Jehovah's Witnesses a bit because they want you to just stay in companionship with only other witnesses. So they didn't encourage you to go and meet with people outside the religion. So, but anyway, I went down to meet Kay. What I didn't know at the time was Kay was having an affair. Now remember, this is the 70s with my husband Hal, and
Oh,
I didn't know it at the time. Although Michael knew it because Kay's husband worked with Michael in San Francisco.
now who's Kay?
Are you following this?
I'm not sure who Kay is
Oh, Kay was the woman the neighbor that lived two doors down from us.
in San
And
Antonio.
so Kay and I decided that we would go to San Francisco to a jazz club that evening. So I went down to her house to say, okay, when are we going to meet? What are we going to wear? When are we going to leave? So forth. And Michael was sitting there and at her house because Kay had also gone through mind dynamics.
Hmm.
So I was speaking with Michael and what they were doing, they were practicing what is called remote healing.
Hmm.
So they were imagining someone whom they've never met and they were doing a healing with that or for that person. And that was fascinating to me. And Michael said, well, if you guys are going into San Francisco, I live in Sausalito. Why don't you stop by? I'll cook you dinner on the way to San Francisco. So that's what we did. We stopped by his place in Sausalito. And honestly, Jack, Kay sat there at the table with us and watched us fall in love.
Ah.
I mean, over that dinner, honestly, it was like a thunderbolt. I could not believe this man and it was so exciting to be with him and his brain, what his sense of philosophy and his outreach to all these different religions uh, and the music he loved. I mean, it just everything was clicking. However, remember, I'm still a Jehovah's Witness.
And
And
Mary.
so we actually, Kay and I didn't make it to San Francisco. So I went back home, and it was a couple of weeks before I called Michael on the phone. He didn't call me because he knew I was married, and that was not part of his he had enough integrity not to fool with that, even though he knew my husband was having an affair with Kay. I mean, yeah, with Kay. And anyway, I called him and we planned to meet. And I told him, I said, Michael, look, I want to come over and talk about spiritual things. And he said, great, come on over. So I went over to his apartment. He was living in a duplex at that time. And I came in with all my Jehovah's Witnesses books with the Watchtower
Uh-huh.
translation of the Bible and everything else. And we went down into his second bedroom, which was floor to ceiling filled with books, everything from the Bhagavad Gita to Judaism to science of mind to I mean, everything, Buddhism, all of it. It was, and I said, look, I want to talk about the Bible and I want to use my translation of the Bible. And that's when he said, Jack, he said, oh, and he reached back and he pulled out this green New World Translation of the Bible. He said, oh, you mean this one? You can imagine. I was thinking, oh my goodness, maybe he's being more inclusive than I am. I was shocked that he had my Bible. What he had a whole shelf of different translations of the Bible. And nevertheless, we still grappled with scripture. I wish I could remember what actual verse and chapters we talked about, but I would say, Michael, now you can see this is what this means when I would read some particular verse. And every time I did that, Jack, he would say, yes, yes, I can see that. Yes. And you might look at it like this. He never said, no, you're wrong. That's a wrong interpretation. He never said that. He never negated what I what I was talking about or how I was viewing it. He never negated my view, but he expanded it
Mm.
and kept expanding it. And the more he did that, the more excited I got. And I went home, got my clothes, came back, and we were together from then on. Hal and I divorced. Hal eventually married Kay, and so we that was the beginning. And you know, Jack, that if there's an origin myth to New Dimensions, that's it. That conversation in that little library of Michael's.
Uh-huh.
9 months later, we incorporated New Dimensions as a nonprofit organization.
What year would that have been?
So that was 1973.
73. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's the origin of
Uh-huh.
New Dimensions and the foundation story. And we continue to explore with for me deep curiosity with different people. I continue to do, although Michael passed on in 2013, I continue the work. I continue to do interviews with New Dimensions. I head up the team. I do everything. I do the fundraising. I don't do everything. I have a small team of
Uh-huh.
four people that help out with different aspects of New Dimensions.
Yeah. I want to come back to the beginnings of New Dimensions, but let's go back to Michael's origins. Like, where's he from? And fill in for him since he's
Oh,
not here.
good. Michael grew up outside of Washington, D.C. He went to Gonzaga High School. The library that he used when he was in high school was the Library of Congress.
Uh-huh.
And one time, Michael and I were back east, and Michael had a son, Michael Jr., and he had two kids, Jeremy and Megan. And so we were visiting, and Michael wanted to take his grandchildren to his library, which was the Library of Congress. And so we went there, but it was hard to park. So Michael said, "Well, you guys go in, and I'll wait for you here." So I went into the Library of Congress with the kids, and we made a plan. They wanted to explore, so we made a plan to meet down with where the store was, where they would sell little things about whatever you can, t-shirts and coffee cups and so forth. And I said, okay, I'll meet you here. So come down, don't take too long. Well, at that time, they were having a display of all the different aspects of the movie The Wizard of Oz.
Mm.
And they found that display, and so they spent more time. I got pretty worried about them, but finally, they showed up and they said, "Oh, we got lost," and they couldn't find the little shop and they got lost. But anyway, all was good. It ended well. Well, several years later, Michael and I were at some ceremony that was put out by the Templeton Foundation, I think. And we were invited to that. And we were in the cathedral, the main cathedral in Washington, D.C., where it was happening, the honorary degrees or whatever was happening. And so we got some VIP seats. And so I'm sitting like in the second row or something. And there's this man next to me. And we start talking before the ceremony starts. And I was telling him about the kids getting lost in the Library of Congress. And I said, whatever I said to him, and he said, "Oh, well, you need to know, I'm the head librarian of the Library of Congress." I couldn't. It was such a great synchronicity. And he said,
Yeah.
"Hi," and we both agreed there's no better place for kids to get lost than the Library of Congress. So these were some of the synchronicities that would just happen for Michael and I throughout our relationship. He was born and raised there, and then
Now, is
he's
that the Virginia side or the Maryland side? Where
Virginia side. Um, let's see, it
Alexandria?
wasn't Alexandria. Yeah, Alexandria, right.
But it's
Exactly.
right over the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. And he went to work at some point for a place called Verityper, which was a typesetting
Uh-huh.
outfit when they used to do coal type and everything. So it was kind of that. And then he moved to California and he and a partner started the first mail order organization or company in east of the Mississippi River. I mean, west of the Mississippi River. And he started a response marketing group. It was huge. I mean, they did their own printing, they did their own artwork, they wrote their own copy, they did all this direct mail stuff. And at that point, when Michael was voted one of the top copywriters in the US by the DMMA, I think it's called Direct Marketing Mail Association, I think. And so he did the creative part. He did the writing and so forth. And that's when I met him when he was still doing that. And then after we started New Dimensions, one of the ways we supported it was he would do seminars all over the country for nonprofit organizations called Successful Marketing Techniques for the Nonprofit Organization. So all of his background in copywriting and reaching out to people and reaching out to constituents and funding an organization really came in really helped us to
Yeah.
fund our whole organization. And there were 5,000 organizations, nonprofit organizations that came through those seminars through the years.
Wow.
I think we did them for about 3 years.
Hmm.
And yeah, he was very good at that and very good at fundraising and knowing how to write copy and all of that. I still, even to this day, will reflect and look up some of his great writing to help me even today.
Now, he had a previous wife and the kids.
Yes, he did. He got married. They had one child, Michael Jr. Uh, Sad to say, very, very, very sad. This is very sad. Michael Jr. then moved out and before he got married and had children, he moved out to California and lived with us for a while. And it turns out, I think that Michael Jr. was bipolar, but so he'd get these manic episodes, and we kept trying to work with him psychologically, Jack. But it's a brain chemistry thing, and we didn't understand that at the time. And so he moved back. Mike Jr. finally moved back to the Washington, D.C. area. He got married, had two kids, and later got divorced, and probably because of his bipolar stuff and episodes that he would have. And eventually he committed suicide.
Mm,
And it was very, very devastating for us, for sure. That and now I understand more about that particular diagnosis and how we could have helped him in another way. But at that time, it wasn't well known.
yeah. And the first wife?
And so I don't think she ever remarried, but she eventually passed on. So
Did
I,
Michael divorce her, or does
yeah,
she?
oh yeah, they got divorced. Yeah, definitely.
And then before he moved to California, or?
Yeah, but he was paying child support and everything
Mhm.
for many years while Mike Jr. was growing up, and then he moved out to be with us
Uh-huh.
when he got a little bit older.
So now the two of you have just fallen in love, and 9 months later, you created New Dimensions. But where were you? Were you living in Sausalito at his place, or?
Yes, we were living in Sausalito at his place, and then we moved to San Francisco and rented a brand new building near Castro and Market. And it was a 5-story building. We lived on the top floor in a 3-bedroom apartment, and underneath that was the office that in the another 3-bedroom apartment, and then underneath that we did a our mail order cassettes. At that time, we were shipping out
Uh-huh.
cassettes to people of the program. And then underneath that was our studio, and our archive of tapes were housed there. These are the reel to reel
Uh-huh.
tapes, the original tapes,
Right.
and they were housed there. And my son moved in with us, and he built a photographic studio for himself. He took photographs, and even today he is a professional photographer.
Ah,
And he would take pictures of Bucky Fuller or whoever came through the studio. He would be our official photographer and took many pictures.
I remember that because I was there in late 70s at some point when you interviewed me the first time, and
Yes,
dimly remember the building. It was
yes.
uh, so. Now, how did you come up with the name of New Dimensions? Is there a story behind that?
Not really. It was Michael. Michael said, "Okay, we'll call it New Dimensions Foundation." And he used the name Foundation. He said, "This will give it more credibility." So we incorporated as New Dimensions Foundation. But he it came about. All right, Michael and I were in Sausalito, and we had been attending. I think that we had gone to Berkeley, and there was something called, oh, what was the name of it? Anyway, there was a KPFA was having a conference, and people like Ralph Metzner, who worked with Tim Leary and
Right.
that whole group, was there, and other people, and Charlie Tart was there.
Uh-huh.
And I remember Charlie Tart was saying, there's a lot going on and nobody is reporting on it. And so later, when we were at breakfast the next day, we were sitting at the breakfast table, and a friend of Michael's was living with us at the time, Jim Hill. And Michael was saying, repeating what Charlie Tart had said about, nobody's really reporting on this. There's so much happening. I mean, at that point, we're in the early 70s, and the San Francisco Bay Area was a candy store of consciousness
Oh,
raising.
yeah.
You can probably remember it. It was, all the gurus coming from the East and other teachers and SRI, Stanford Research
Right.
Center, and Willis Harman, and, all sorts of things were going on. And that's when Jim Hill, after Michael repeated what Charlie Tart had said, he said, well, Michael, why don't you do something about that? And then very next day, Michael went to the lawyer he had used at his response marketing group and said, I'd like to incorporate a nonprofit organization and I'd like to call it New Dimensions Foundation. And so that's how it started, with that challenge from our dear friend and many times guest, Charles Tart, who worked with psychic phenomena, and he was a scientist and really looking very carefully at all sorts of phenomena in consciousness.
Yeah, I remember his was a big name back in the 70s when
Yes.
I didn't get back out here till 75. I was an intern in San Francisco in 69, 70. I missed Woodstock. I was still in med school, and the Summer of Love had just passed. And so uh, I would pick up the dregs of it going over to Haight-Ashbury. And uh, David Smith actually had me give a talk at one of his open storefronts. And I was struggling to figure out what I was going to do because I knew sick care wasn't for me. And there was this amazing stuff. I wore this shirt in honor of our talk today because it's a genuine 70s tie-dye, uh, taking me back. I
I
found it in a
love it.
back drawer. I have the rainbow one too, but it's a little too wild for the to distract from our
Oh,
conversation.
I'm sorry not to see the rainbow one. I'll have to see it someday,
Yeah.
Jack.
Well, they still make those. That's the most popular one. Anyway, it was a time to just wow. Uh, and now, who was your first interview?
It might have been Ram Dass.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it might have been Ram Dass, I believe. Yes. And he was teaching at that time all around and having satsang, so to speak, and
Uh-huh.
um, just really wonderful to be with him. Yeah.
Now, were you also broadcasting on the radio?
Well, all right. The story of that, what Michael and I did when all right, so it's March and we decide, okay, what are we going to do? What are our first activities? And Michael said, well, let's do a lecture series. And so we rented the First Unitarian Church in San Francisco. And when we did that, we uh, we had like six different lectures from different people from all sorts of different walks of life. Like I remember Haridas Chaudhry was one, who was the founder of CIIS. At that
Hmm.
time, it was called Institute of Asian Studies, and then
Yeah.
later Institute of Integral Studies. And other people, two Catholic priests I remember, and a psychologist, so a lot of different kinds of people from different avenues, different modes of thinking and working, and so we would tape that. There were somebody came and taped it for us. They had a big tape recorder, reel to reel, and they would tape it for us because we wanted to document it. And on the fourth lecture, that guy didn't show up. So we didn't have anybody to tape. And before the lecture started, a man came in with a kind of big suitcase, and it turned out to be Stephen Hill. And for those who don't know who Stephen Hill is, he's the founder of the radio series Music from the Hearts of Space.
That's amazing because I always connect you with that.
Oh, well, of course, yeah, there it is. And
Ah,
so he walked in and he asked us, he said, I just bought this new Nagra tape recorder and I would like to test it out. Do you mind if I tape this session? Synchronicity strikes, right? That was a time when the other guy didn't show up. So, of course, we said yes. And then we went out to dinner
well, now,
with,
did he speak then in place of the missing speaker?
oh, no, no, no. He taped it.
But the guy didn't show up.
The guy who normally taped
Oh,
our
it wasn't the speaker that didn't show up. It was the taper. Oh, okay. I thought it was the speaker didn't
It
show.
was the person who
Oh,
would
okay.
tape it and document it for
Yeah.
us. And so we went out for lunch with him or dinner afterwards and with several other people who were there. And one of the persons there, I'm trying to think of his name. Anyway, he said over dinner, he said, I do this program on KQED radio. And I'm going to start traveling around and I can't do it anymore. Would you be interested in doing that program and taking over for me? Eric Anderson was his name. And he and Michael said, sure. And so again, synchronicity. That's when we started airing a program every other week on KQED. They didn't even know they had a radio station at that time. There was the Korean Hour and the I don't know what else, Rosicrucians Hour, whatever it was. But we started airing every other week on KQED, and then pretty soon it was every week. And then pretty soon it was 4 hours every Saturday night live
I
on
remember.
KQED.
Yeah.
And that was like an institution because their broadcast reach was practically all of Northern California. I
Yeah.
mean, it was huge outreach. And we would have call-ins. We would sometimes have a single person. We would, and the people who called in, Jack, they were just as good a host as we were because the questions they asked and were just magnificent and added to the whole operation. And we would tape all of those. Sometimes we would bring in tapes that we had done outside and then bring them in and air them with whatever guests we had, and we'd play it, and the guests would comment on it. And
Mhm.
so we really learned. And Stephen Hill would be our engineer, and he brought in all the music that we would use. And
Mm.
it was what a marvelous time that was. And pretty soon, after about 5, 6 years, KQED started to realize, oh, they could make money on this radio station that they had. And so they took over the program and they took us off the air. So, but another synchronicity at that time. So it was like in the mid 70s, a little bit late, well, coming towards the 1980s now. And Barbara Marks Hubbard was on our board of directors, and she gave us a $5,000 grant
Mm.
for Michael and our chief engineer to go to Kansas City to the NPR annual gathering.
Mhm.
So National Public Radio would put together a conference each year. So what we did at that time, we had Jeffrey Mishlove of
Oh yeah.
Thinking Aloud. He had been doing a 1 hour program on KSAN, KSAN, which is a rock station in the Bay Area, and he was doing a program there. And he was no longer doing it. He said, "Do you want to take it over?" So we took over that program series as well. So when we went to Kansas City, we had 52 weeks of 1 hour programs already in the can, finished, done, complete, and documented and described. And so at that time, when Michael and Phil Catalfo went to Kansas City, the NPR had just gotten uplinks and downlinks to satellites, and
Hmm.
all the stations were now getting downlinks, and it was getting very techy now.
Hmm.
And the stations were really excited about using all this new technology, but nobody had thought about the content. Okay, so you have all this new technology. Now, what are you going to do with it? Well, New Dimension shows up, and we had a booth there, thanks to Barbara Marks Hubbard. And she said, okay, I mean, and then we offered stations a year's worth of 1 hour New Dimensions programming, and we walked away from that conference with 100 stations signed up.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of our launch beyond KQED now to our international uh, or outreach. And in fact, I know that you lived in Australia for a while. For many years we were on the Australian Broadcasting Network,
ABC. Yeah.
ABC, for many years.
Oh.
It was only in the last I don't know, 5 or 6 years that they then changed their format, and we're no longer heard on the ABC. But um, anyway, that was the beginning of our outreach.
And I want to mention Michael had this amazing radio voice too, that was a real boon to your popularity of I just love to listen to him. So
And he was brilliant. He
yeah.
was brilliant. He would come up with questions that it just would blow my socks off. He was so good at that. I must say that I have to really study to do an interview. I have to read a whole book, and I have to take 20 pages of notes, and I have to do all sorts of things. But Michael could just do it on the fly. He
Uh-huh.
really could. He just had, and it was an innate talent and gift that he had. And yes, you're right. His voice was so fine and so worthy of a radio broadcast.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to
So
put a
I'm
link.
glad it's preserved, that you
Yeah.
can still hear it, because all of those programs are, if they haven't been totally restored, many of them are available on our website.
Uh-huh. So you're still in the five-story Victorian and
No, no. Let's see. The owner of the building wanted to move in finally, and we had to leave. And that's when Michael and I also were working with a group of people in shamanic ways, and we together bought some property up in Hopland, California, which is
Hmm.
in just over the border of Mendocino County.
Right.
And we bought that property together. And so Michael and I moved up there for,
Oh,
yeah, so we were living on the land, chopping wood and carrying
very
water.
modern.
And yeah,
Good old
yeah,
Hopland, yeah, with the
yeah,
cheesecake factory downtown. And
that's right.
I
That's
used to
right.
go through there on my way to Ukiah, and then what's its name? The big alternative energy place on the south side, the
Y-
catalog with all the solar stuff.
Oh yeah, and the maker of yurts.
Oh
They
yeah,
made yurts up there. Yeah, exactly.
that
Yes.
small world.
Was it Paul Stamets lived up there?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, for a while.
Huh.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he and for listeners, he's the one who does um
Mushroom.
mushrooms
Yeah,
and grows mushrooms. You'll see his formulas in Whole Foods and other places. Yeah.
yeah. So you continued recording people there? Did you have a
Well, we
studio?
would at that point we would drive down to Sausalito,
Uh-huh.
and at that time, IONS, Institute of Noetic Sciences, had offices in Sausalito. So
I
we
remember.
rented an office space and built a studio there. So we were kind of embedded
Uh-huh.
in ions and noetics and people who would come to us to do an interview would go up to ions and people who were visiting ions would come down to us
Great
and
cross-fertilization.
Willis Harmon was there at that time, and Wink Franklin. It was just a wonderful. We would rub shoulders with
Mm.
each other, and it was that was marvelous to have that studio there. And so that lasted for quite a few years. And then Ions bought that property up in Upper Marin,
Yeah.
and they moved up there, and then we started our own studio in Ukiah, which made it really hard for people to get all the way. That's more than 2 hours away from San Francisco
Yeah.
Bay. So that was a bit of a hardship, but we managed that for quite a few years. And then finally, we moved, Michael and I moved out of Ukiah and down to Santa Rosa, which made it much easier.
Uh-huh.
And now we're on Zoom like you. I mean, now
Right.
we do all
Yeah.
of our interviews electronically on Zoom,
So
and that
much
way
easier.
we don't have to wait for people to be in the area. We
Yeah.
can do people from all over the world, and that makes it just marvelous. I mean, I just did an interview last week with someone in Canada.
Uh,
So it just was wonderful to be able to choose interviews from wherever people are located.
yeah. And you still have most of the old ones. You said you restored some of the audio tapes and
Exactly. We're looking for funding to continue that restoration project. We've digitized most of them, many, many, many hours. And also Stanford University is also digitizing. But what we're doing is more than just digitizing. We're doing some edits on the program. Some of those older programs have very long music breaks, so we're cutting those down. We're then re-describing it, and that's the main thing because the descriptions we have for those older programs were pretty short, and so we're really getting more detailed with the descriptions. So the legacy of New Dimensions can live on and be really easily searchable
hmm
so that people can really access all of that because New Dimensions has been called the 21st legacy of the Alexandria the library, and it records the changing of an age.
Yeah.
It really does. And some of these older people that have moved on, the Joseph Campbells and the Bucky Fullers and so many people. I just recently, Robert Thurman has passed on, the
And
Buddhist scholar,
Gene Houston a
and
couple weeks
Jean
ago.
Houston. And we have hours with both Robert Thurman and Jean Houston. We've interviewed them many times. So, in fact, just coming up this week, we're putting out a spotlight that spotlights 4 interviews that we did with Robert Thurman as a tribute to his grand work.
Uh-huh.
So we pull that out of the archive and rebroadcast that, and we rebroadcast other programs because we always emphasize timeless wisdom. It's not dated in time as much as it is timeless. It's
Mm.
Kairos time, I guess you would call it, rather than
Mhm.
Chronos time.
Fascinating. It reminds me of, in some ways, of this project where I started noticing as friends were dying, and like Norm Shealy was a big influence in the holistic movement that was happening the same time that Ardell and I were promoting wellness. And fortunately, I got him before he died, and Gene Liedloff when I got into infant wellness, and they, originally I did like four or five just for fun, and then I thought, well, this could be a project, and it's helped me put together how I was influenced in so many different areas. And you were like massively larger than my little sphere. You helped expand it for me, but I remember Hardy Jones used to have these meetings with remarkable men, and we had Bucky Fuller down at what was that place south of Santa Cruz that he used to rent, and
Was it in Pajaro Dunes?
yeah, Pajaro Dunes,
Yeah.
yeah, and he had flotation tanks, and Jeffrey Mishlove did one of his experiments. We were imagining the smokestacks down at whatever that power plant is,
Moss
Moss
Landing.
Landing, yeah,
Yes.
and they were amazing. Oh, he did one with Fritz Capra and who's the other physicist? Um,
Wolf,
yeah, Fred Wolf. Yeah,
Fred Allen Wolf, right.
he's the only one that's turned me down for an interview.
Really?
And we'd
Really?
actually I'd met with him several times personally over the years, but he doesn't do interviews anymore. So
Oh,
I'd
too
like to
bad.
get
Too
him
bad.
because he was a big influence with his space, time, and beyond. And
Yes.
uh, anyway,
Yes. Yes. We've interviewed Fritjof Capra and Jeffrey Mitchell, of course,
yeah,
and Fred Allen Wolf. In fact, we went to Dharamsala as part of a group, and Fred Allen
yeah,
Wolf was with us.
yeah,
Yeah, he he was kind of a coyote
yeah.
character, a trickster character at that conference. Yeah.
Well, and even in What the Bleep, uh,
Yeah,
the way
right.
he ended that, sitting in the center of the Palace of Fine Arts, or
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Uh, so. I'm sort of overwhelmed with where could we go next.
I know, I know. Well, I just want to thank you, Jack, for I think that your effort here is very, very important. And it's a wonderful document of what you're capturing for those of us who are getting long in the tooth, so to speak. And we to document. I mean, no one has asked me the questions that you have asked me.
Uh-huh.
No one has elicited the stories that I have
Yeah,
told on this particular broadcast. So I'm so grateful for you and your interest, your curiosity, your hanging in there with all of us and continuing to ask really wonderful questions and
uh,
documenting it. I really deeply, deeply appreciate you and all
well,
the work that you have done through the years.
it's my nosiness putting it to a good cause. It's like I have Virgo rising, and picky, 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 as my astrologer friend said. So I monetized that by becoming professional proofreader and book editor. So
That's
it
wonderful.
wasn't
That's
much money
wonderful.
in wellness, but I could uh, market some of my picky pickiness.
Well, I'm so grateful for your pickiness and your Virgo rising.
Well, what final words would you like to leave with our viewers and listeners for?
Well, I guess the final what's really most important to me is that in these times, that number one, despair is not an option. So we need to get on the playing field, make our contribution, and not do it in isolation. We must do it in community with others.
Mm,
This is really important. Do not isolate ourselves, but to stay in community, to to give whatever gift we're here to give, because I think we all have a soul assignment
yeah.
that we're here to give, and to give it, even if we think it's really small and it won't make a difference, it makes a difference.
Adds
So
up.
do it, do
Hmm.
it. Stay connected, stay engaged, and keep giving what we can. And be joyful. Remember to play. Remember to continue to play and laugh.
Hey, amen. I think that's a great way to end things. So I will stop the recording and